in with 2 feet. The first one was held in Vancouver, and from that time I've learned so much in this new economy community, in part from my work as Executive Director of Community Microlending, and then on my last 3 years as a City Councillor, thinking about, as Donna asked, how can City Council, Mayor and Council, have an impact on the new economy? As we all are probably aware, 50% of the world's population live in cities, and as Donna already told us, cities are the future. They're the ground zero, they're the site of the new economy. And so what this means is that we as human beings need to be continually learning and developing economic, technological solutions, and solutions where we put our passions and our gifts to work every day. And it's really exciting to me because I believe that local government is the best level of government, not just to support, but to lead the way, to be a catalyst for the flourishing of the new economy in our city. This means we need to change a little bit of the way that we do business, and what it really means is that we need to work with you, with your ideas, with your innovations. So when you come knocking at City Hall to say, I have a new idea in service of life, we'll say, we'd love to hear more about that. I look forward to the discussion tonight and to learning with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. Next, we're going to hear from Changes the Clown. Lisa, can you pass the talking stick?
It would be my honor.
One in 5 children and an astounding 1 in 2 children of single mothers live in poverty in Victoria. BC has had the highest rate of child poverty in the country for 9 of the last 10 years. The provincial government stubbornly ignores this social crisis in our community. Changes the Clown has become increasingly distressed at the failure of governments to address this crisis of child poverty in our midst. 1 in 5 children and 1 in 2, that's right, half of all children of single mothers live in poverty in Victoria. And Changes wants people to join him in calling for something to be done about that. Changes the Clown believes that as the capital city of the province with the highest rate of child poverty in the country year after year, the City of Victoria should demonstrate how this unacknowledged social crisis can be addressed at the municipal level, despite the fact that it formally falls under provincial and not municipal jurisdiction. The 2 main planks of Change's election platform address this crisis of child poverty. One of these is an affordable childcare program, like the one that's currently being planned by the City of Vancouver. The City of Vancouver recently announced $30 million in funding for new affordable childcare spaces at the municipal level. So it's a clear precedent for this sort of thing. And the second main platform plank is a living wage policy, like the one that's been in place in the city of New Westminster since 2010. So another precedent, at the municipal level in this province. So these are not things that can't be done. As voting day comes closer, I feel like I should be pointing out to people that the Changes for Mayor campaign is not about getting votes. If you're a voter on the left, you should be voting for the contender on the left and not for the clown. If you want to help out the Changes for Mayor campaign, the thing to do is talk to the politicians about having something done about this.
Thank you very much. And our next candidate tonight is Jason Ross. Can you pass the talking stick, please, to Jason?
Hi there. This has been my first election, and people have asked me why I ran for mayor and not for councillor. And the primary reason is because there's not really the opportunity for councillors to get their voice out. There's a lot more opportunity in this city for the mayor to speak. And so I've been trying to speak from the heart and a little close to the mic. All right, thank you. And I've been trying to just talk about what it is that I feel the city really needs, and I think it's a real fresh change, and we need to really. I come from an IT background, and I've learned through developing that the problems that we face are things that we can fix if we look at the source of the problem and start to break it down into detail and really be thorough and exacting in our detail. And we also need to be able to express what it is that we're trying to do clearly. And I feel those are two things that the city doesn't do very well right now. They're not very thorough in their detail, and they're not very open and expressive to the community. And we seem to spend a lot of money on making really flashy things that don't really engage or inform the public. Things that I've learned from, I've been bringing cameras around to meetings for a long time, and I've been shooting video pretty high quality, multiple cameras, multiple edits, and I found that it's you can make a really effective communication strategy by very cheaply if you just have passion and involvement and community arrangement. And I think we can get a much more productive city if we bandy together, talk about our issues locally, and share the information online on the internet. And I'll talk about more of that this evening.
Thank you very much. Can you pass the talking stick, please, to Dean Fortin?
Sorry, thank you, Don. I was just waiting for the...
It's yours.
Thank you. I too do want to start by recognizing that we are gathered today. Sorry about that. I do want to begin by recognizing that we are in the traditional territories of the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nations. Our First Nations are a big part of our past. They are an essential part of our future. And we need to continue to move forward in the City of Victoria, making sure that all voices, but most especially their voice, is part of how we move forward in the future and that they've heard. I also want to take a minute just to let you know a little bit who I am. I live in the City of Victoria. I have in the past got a degree in geography, got a degree in law, got a degree in master's in counseling and education. I was just saying in my own head going, okay, you think you should actually use some of that stuff? But fundamentally, I have. Throughout my practice, I've had an opportunity to work with street kids here in downtown Victoria. Then I moved on to the Burnside Gorge Community Center, which was a great place to be. It was an inner city neighborhood, an opportunity to work with families, with individuals and youth. And through that, we started to move forward into enterprising nonprofits approach, into asset-based approach, doing something called family self-sufficiency, allowing people to grow and create their own businesses. From there, we moved on to City Hall. And part of the work that we see and what we're seeing is more and more businesses that I think the term often is a value-based business. But when you meet someone like Renee and Andrew from Sitka who say, we're actually, an environmental action committee disguised as a clothing store, you understand where people are. It's not about making money. It's about making change in the world, and through that, but using more of a new economy business approach and making things happen. And so we continue to understand that entrepreneurs have been the sole source for all new jobs. But what's truly driving them is not the dollar anymore, but it's about the change that they can affect in the world as they make their income. So there's lots of things I'm looking forward to exploring. Tonight for me is less of a debate and more about an opportunity to share ideas and perhaps even more in a sharing economy to learn from the questions that are asked.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so now, through the mug of decision, Jason Ross is going to speak first. But I'm going to read out the questions, so you might want to, the question is a little bit long and has a lot of pieces, so you might want to take notes for the other candidates, because I'm only going to read the question once. So question 1, for a long time, the government, tourism, UVic have played a really large role in driving the economic engine of Victoria. Economic development is practiced here, has sought to attract, and sometimes was even biased for non-local companies. It makes it harder for local companies to compete. Now with the downturn in local businesses, there's an even larger struggle. We have a world-class city whose beautiful businesses are struggling in their attempt to be part of the solution in to emerging global crisis, instead of being part of the problem, such as Sitka, Be Love, Make House, etc. What are you hearing from entrepreneurs in this city that's missing from the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Victoria? Biotech is part of it. What about the arts, local food system, culture-based businesses, social innovation, and the knowledge sector, in addition to conventional businesses in Victoria?
I think there's a lot that could be done in the city, and a lot of it comes from a need to really share information. I think is a big thing. I've got friends that opened up the Games Cafe downtown, and it's a new idea, and they're actually book solid a lot of the time, and it's. But one of the hardships that they had was dealing with the city and trying to get their business up and going. They had to deal with a whole lot of different people, and they were told one thing by one person and told something by somebody else. And one of the comments that they made was that they were not really told what to do. They just came forward and did their work, and then were told, no, that's not good. And they didn't have that sort of guiding mentorship process. And I think that's one of the areas where the city can really improve, and in doing so, it can actually improve the local business situation here. One, streamlining the process to allow businesses to start up more easily, provide more of a mentorship program, perhaps even to help them deal with the hurdles, the common mistakes that happen for new businesses. The other thing that I think the city can really end up benefiting the economy is just encouraging more discussion and more meetings together, getting people with ideas and businesses together at City Hall or at the conference center on a regular basis and just talk about what people want to do, what's missing, what people think there's a spot that they could fill in, and the big part, especially where I think the city can help, is matching local ideas with local funding. That's something that I think needs to happen both inside of government and outside of government, but the city itself, I think, can really help.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Changes the Clown.
Not so sure that I completely understand the question. Is it about what this Jason was answering? Part of what Jason was saying was answering a question about what the city can do to revitalize the economy?
Yeah, beyond the conventional drivers of the economy, where are the real places for innovation, and what's the role of the city?
Sure, okay. One of the two main planks on the Changes for Mayor election platform is a living wage policy, similar to the one that's been in place in New Westminster since 2010. I heard the other day, actually, within the last week, there's a First Nations community, I think it's north of Tofino on the island here somewhere, I think it's on the coast north of Tofino, that's also instituted a living wage policy. Obviously a completely different community from Victoria, but you know, this kind of thing is catching on. It's not all that uncommon. When you put more money in the pockets of low-paid workers, it has a specific kind of dynamic effect on the local economy. The extra money in low-paid workers' pockets gets spent locally, gets spent in the local community pretty much immediately on important needs. So it doesn't get extracted from the community. It doesn't get removed from the local economy, for example, by being invested in the stock market or by being spent on a winter holiday in the tropics or being put into a retirement fund or something in some other way removed from the local economy. Instead, more money in the hands of low-paid workers gets spent immediately in the local economy on important needs, and has a specific kind of stimulative effect on the local economy. So that's something that the city could do. The living wage policy in New Westminster doesn't cover very much, and Lisa has pointed out that if that exact policy was transferred to Victoria, it would have no effect whatsoever. I imagine a slightly more extensive policy, extending the New Westminster approach to include workers for companies that have contracts with the city, or something along that line. I mean, there's various ways you could arrange this, but I think something a little more aggressive than the New Westminster approach might be appropriate, would have more effect.
Thank you. Lisa Helps, you're next.
Thank you, Changes. So I heard two questions. One is, what do I hear is missing from the ecosystem? And number two, what can the city do? So first of all, I want to talk about what exists, because that's a good way to talk about what's missing. Things like more spaces for incubating businesses. So the dock is up and running, and there are some other spaces that have started for incubation. I think we could do a lot more to foster and support startups. Things like the food eco district. I love that Big Wheel Burger is going to plant lettuce on their boulevard to top their burgers with, and that's a partnership between a small local business and the food eco district that was just announced in the Times Colonist a couple days ago. So I think the city fostering and nurturing an ecosystem that already exists. One of the things, and Jason raised this already, one of the things that I hear a lot from people is access to financing. And it's amazing what a small loan can do to help a small entrepreneur. So for the last 5 years, I've run an organization called Community Microlending. We make small loans and mentorship to, and give mentorship to people who want to start small businesses. But we actually don't make the loans. We connect people in the community who have money to lend with people in the community who need money. And we, or a community member, lent one guy $5,000 for a pickup truck and 2 wheelbarrows. He's a stonemason. He turned that $5,000 loan and mentorship into a $300,000 business in his second year, and he hired 5 people. So community microlending is one source of financing. The Community Social Planning Council has recently launched a community investment fund. And this is an opportunity for local people to invest their money locally in affordable housing and social enterprise startups. So again, what can the city do? The city can nurture and support all of these innovative ideas that are popping up. The city doesn't need to be everything to everybody, but our role as a local government is to nurture and support these new ideas into existence. So I'm looking forward to doing that.
Thank you. Next, Dean Fortin.
Thank you. The first part of the question is, when you go out and talk to people, young entrepreneurs and others. Thanks very much. So the first part of the question is, you know, when you go out and talk to people, what are you hearing? And I've had a great time over the last 2 years, actually, doing these things called kitchen talks. And spent a lot of time talking to a lot of different technology groups throughout, whether it be Kixeye or Zynga or Cano Apps or all of the geographic places. It's been fabulous. I have to separate the two. So the first thing is, when you talk to all the workers, they want what we all want. They want a good paying job. They want to be able to afford to live here. They want someplace that they can raise a family. They also want to have a little bit of fun. They talk about, you know, important livability issues, about having busing and bike lanes. They talk about wanting a bowling alley downtown. I'm not sure if I can quite give that to them, but I mean, we do have a free lawn bowling facility downtown that we might be able to do on that. But when you talk to the people who are running and the businesses, often we hear the same thing that's been mentioned before, which is, can you help open up foreign markets? Can you help attract investments? Where can you help attract getting good employees? This is part of the challenges that we hear from our new people. But they also talk about, how can we help create and set an environment in a city for entrepreneurship? All of the net new jobs in the last 10 years in all of North America have come through, small and medium businesses have come through what we call emerging markets or startups. That's where they've come from. We're seeing some great things happening. Sometimes it's just getting out of their way, like we did with Viatech, facilitating them moving onto Fort Street, moving their application forward, but making sure we're making changes. It was about making changes so Owen Matthews could move forward with his concept of Space Bar, making sure there's an opportunity for people for them to incubate and move forward. Sometimes it's like trying to move UVic down here. Can we do a partnership with them and their School of Business so that they can use the buildings that they own in the downtown to create opportunities for free space for entrepreneurship? So there are many opportunities, there's many steps that have been taken, and we look forward to doing more.
Thank you. The second question. You'll know in just a minute. It's a big mystery. The second question, given that the city of Victoria is in the grip of an unacknowledged social crisis, with 1 in 5 children and more than half of children and single mothers living below the StatsCan poverty line, what specific initiatives do you intend to undertake, in addition to continuing the city's work on social housing, to address this civic emergency? And the first speaker will be Jason Ross.
One of the interesting little ideas that I discovered when I was living up north was in the town of Fort Nelson. Every Christmas they do an annual Christmas dinner where they actually get together and make an enormous dinner for the entire town, and it's for free. Everybody can come down, whether you're rich or poor, sit side by side and actually have a proper meal for the holiday. And what that said to me was the community can achieve a whole lot, and when we're working together especially. And one of the things that I think the city really needs is to foster that sense of community. I don't think we have a lot of real intimate sharing of how the problems that we're facing at the local level. And a lot of that has to do with the information not being available in a way that's easy to consume. You have to generally come down to a meeting and pay attention in person. You don't have the opportunity like this to be able to watch what people are discussing online. And there are a lot of good organizations in town that I think if you had Our Place, if you had excuse me, I know that's a problem. Sorry, it's been a long day today. I apologize. But but those organizations, there's a lot of these organizations in town that they don't get the help that they need. I think because they aren't visible enough. And in the 21st century, we should be online with these type of things. The information should be available online. It should be, especially like I can find out who these organizations are, but it's hard to find out what they do on a day-to-day basis because the information, you have to go to meetings in particular. And so I think that's really one of the things that the city can really make a positive change is by going out and increasing the conversation in an online fashion and connected fashion.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Changes the Clown.
Thanks. This was actually my question that I submitted. Am I answering my own question?
You are.
Oh, that's okay. That's
you
easy.
all are.
The two initiatives that Changes would undertake are an affordable childcare program and a living wage policy. Affordable childcare has been there's been a provincial program in the province of Quebec since I think the 1970s. I think it was Rennie Lebec who brought that in, if I'm not mistaken, the first PQ government. It's at first it was $5 a day. It's gone up to $7 a day, and they're actually considering making more changes to it, making it slightly less available because it's universal daycare, universally available at $7 a day. You've probably heard the federal NDP has recently proposed a $15 a day program, national program. That'd be a policy that they'll be defending, a proposal that they'll be defending in the next election campaign, I imagine. And in this province, there's been a $10 a day program that various groups have been promoting for years. I don't know how long. A number of groups around the province. One is the Women's Rights Committee of the BC Federation of Labour. So that would go a long way to, well, it would particularly be particularly helpful for the large number of single mothers in the community who are unable to work. But it would obviously be, if it was available to them, it would be of help to other families living in at the low end of the economic scale too. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Lisa Helps.
Thank you, Changes. I think I'm really glad that Changes asked this question, and I agree with a number of the things he said in terms of starting points. We need to lobby other levels of government for affordable childcare. That's number one. The provincial government hasn't raised the income assistance rate since goodness knows when. I don't know who can live on $610 a month. So we need to do that. And actually, city governments have a lot of clout, especially when we come together with our colleagues from across British Columbia and across Canada, and there are organizing bodies for that purpose. One of the things I'm really glad to be able to talk about Changes platform tonight, because he tells us at every debate that half of all children of single mothers live in poverty in Victoria. And that corresponds with data from the 2011 census that 50% of all working people 18 years old and older in Victoria make $28,000 per year or less. So what can the city do? all those things that Changes has said and that I agree with. But also, we can do two things. First, we can clean up our act a little bit at City Hall in terms of processing time for business licenses, for tenant improvements. It's if you're a young entrepreneur or a new entrepreneur starting a business, we are not an easy place to come and open your business. So we need to fix that. That's number one, and I'd like to have that done within the first 6 months. We've got great staff, but they just need a little bit of help tweaking the processes. Number two, we need an economic development office at City Hall staffed with economic or enterprise facilitators who understand the needs of small business startups. The reason that people don't make a lot of money is because there aren't a lot of well-paying jobs. If we can get City Hall whistlin' Dixie and then grow our business culture here and then attract business from elsewhere, my goal, and it's a little bit lofty, but is to raise the median income of Victorians from $28,000 to, let's even aim for $35,000 over the next 4 years. And we do that by creating a positive context for job creation so that, as Changes said, our small businesses can afford to pay a living wage. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we'll hear from Dean Fortin.
Thank you. I'm going to start off by saying that although you sort of implied or put forward in the question, I don't think we can easily dismiss the importance of affordable housing. Affordable housing for families is crucial. We know it when we've housed, for example, the homeless. They get to housing with supports. The number of calls for police calls dropped 75%. The number of calls to emergency wards and to mental institutions dropped 75%. Mental health and addiction, poverty is hard to deal with, but it's easier to deal with if you have decent housing. So I don't want to ever dismiss. If you ever say, why are we so focused on housing first? Because we know that it's key to make sure that that is the first step for everything else. Fundamentally, there's some things that we have done in the city and we will continue to do in the city on housing. And clearly, we bought the Travelers Inn. I mean, talk about a risk, but we went out and bought field motels. And one of them now is housing women and children, First Nations. That was extremely important for us to make sure that was there. When we put in the emergency shelter, built a new emergency shelter, we made sure that there was housing for families. So families weren't broken up when they're in emergency and crisis. We also made sure that daycare, we know affordable daycare is the hardest to come by. And so we put it as an amenity that developers could add that. So whether it be the daycare that they put in now at the corner of Hillside and Bay Street, Hillside, where Centennial Daycare is now running the daycare in there and in the new building. That was an amenity that we can allow for, a way to help create affordable daycare, because we know what that means. And finally, we need to continue to allow and fund our community centers, for they are the centers of innovation when it comes to supporting young people and kids in poverty. Whether it be parent programs, whether it's parent support programs, whether it's family sufficiency programs or micro-lending programs, all of that is community driven, and it comes up from the community, but it builds the local support, because fundamentally what families need is their community to come together and support them. And that's what we're trying to do, and that's what we'll continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you. And so the third question for all candidates is, there are public amenities in Victoria that could be used to support the new economy. Neighborhood associations, Crystal Gardens, community centers, the Community Social Planning Council, and so on. When you look at these assets and others, how do you think we could really unleash their potential? And the first candidate to speak is Changes the Clown.
I guess I don't have too much to say on this question, but one obvious sort of question about creating new amenities in the community would be to include affordable childcare spaces in these places. You know, often a new building, a new community building, is a perfect place to include a new community daycare. You know, so that would be one clear sort of approach. I think that's all I'll say about this question.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Jason Ross. Can you please pass the talking stick down to Jason?
Sorry, thank you.
Gotta have my talking stick. Yeah. I think one of the biggest amenities that the city underuses is City Hall itself. Since the city installed video cameras and live streaming in the council chambers, I'd love to see that thing run in 24/7 if we could, as much as we could. Get different people in there, different organizations, different groups that want to talk about a subject, and have it open and online and available for in perpetuity. You know, have the conversation start and never stop. Often what I find with the way that cities operate in general, and the city as well, is that they'll tackle a topic and they'll tackle an issue and they'll come up with a plan and then they'll pass it, and then that's the end of the conversation. And I don't think we should be stopping our conversations when we think we've got it solved. We should always be revising and revisiting to saying, is it still doing what we thought it was going to do? Is there something more we could do now? Can we build off this conversation? But the other thing that we could do is use the conference center as well. I think if we had regular annual conferences, or even more frequently, on these important topics that we talk about issues like the economy, about issues like poverty and homelessness and addiction, and all these issues that we've been talking about throughout this whole campaign, we should be sharing this information a lot more and encouraging people to get together. We're all passionate about this stuff. I think we're all passionate about different issues, and having an ongoing conversation to know, oh, marking my calendars every month or every 3 months, there's going to be a really neat place that I can go to talk to other people that are like-minded like me, and share ideas, and even invite people from outside the city to share and bring new ideas in, because I don't want us to reinvent the wheel. There are lots of people around the planet tackling the same problems, and they're coming up with unique solutions, and we should be going out and actively seeking those and bringing them back here.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Dean Fortin.
Thank you. I want to think this through a little bit more, because although it sounds great to say, let's just use all our public amenities, the two things that come up in my mind is, one, are we doing anybody any favor if we're changing the dynamics? And what I mean by that is, people are out there, social entrepreneurs, such as this site here. Do we help collapse their marketing plan and how they actually keep this place open, because now it's free at City Hall? And nothing's ever free. It just means that somebody else is paying for it. Let's recognize that. I don't want to go and say you can have free space at, for example, Fairfield Community Center or Burnside Community Center. They have a marketing plan where they go out and they get the government to rent their places out, and that's how they pay for their youth programs at night. So I want to be careful when we just say everything's free, or we're looking at, I think our conference center is estimated to generate, $15 million of jobs to our economy. So we say, okay, now that's all free for local groups. Like, now there's a whole lot of people unemployed. So I want to make sure that there's the unintended consequences of saying you can use public space for that reason, or actually not running government as an enterprising nonprofit business. We have to be careful in what we go. So I think there's opportunities for shared use. I'm really going to look forward to it, but I just don't want to just jump in and say it's all free, because nothing's free. And we need to make sure that we're doing it fairly and equal opportunity for everyone.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Lisa Helps.
Thank you. I don't know if this was a question of one of us, but it's a very good question, so thank you for whoever asked it. I have a couple of concrete suggestions, and probably more will come as I engage with you over the next 4 years. One is to do an asset map to see what are the public assets that we have, how are they being used. I completely agree with Dean. The community centers and community associations punch way above their belt. So we wouldn't want to mess with that. But look at what the assets are and have a public conversation about how we can best use these. And I'm talking about physical assets, city spaces. Another idea, and this comes from Councillor Shelley Gudgeon, is to organize a Great Neighborhood Initiative. So if you're interested in that, look for Edmonton's Great Neighborhood Initiative. And that's where they really, with their staff at City Hall, work with their neighborhood associations and their community groups to build them even more, and it's an interdepartmental and really community-based effort. So that's idea number 2. Idea number 3, the city as of April 30th, 2014 had $111 million in investments, and what if we took just 1% of that and put it into the Community Social Planning Council's new Community Investment Fund? We'd have $1 million, it's a very small amount in terms of our overall investments, but that would be $1 million into the local investment fund to help build affordable housing, to help start social enterprises. That's what that fund is for. So that's one idea idea. Obviously, we need to look at all of the things that go along with that. But there are lots that the city can do with your resources. And again, I don't have all the ideas, but I really look forward to hearing from you over the next 4 years what your ideas are and how we can make them happen together.
Thank you very much. And so this is our fourth question. Can Victoria become the solutions broker for creatively solving some of the really big issues? What if the Blue Bridge story and the ongoing sewage issues were to become the keystone banner project that Victoria solves so well, so creatively, that other cities turn to us for their own answers? What as mayor would you do? And the first speaker will be Changes the Clown.
I do think that Victoria could be a banner city for addressing the crisis of child poverty. I mean, it's what better place for it? It's the capital city of the province in the country that's had the highest rate of child poverty for 9 of the last 10 years. What better place to mount a demonstration for the province, the city, the country, the world, of how this kind of thing can be creatively addressed at the local level. I would rather, I think I'll just stay with that and not comment on the Blue Bridge and the sewage problems.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Dean Fortin.
You know, I'm not afraid of talking about the bridge. I think there's some great things about the bridge that we put forward, and we have a tendency to forget with all of the little hurly-burly that goes on. But let's recognize what this bridge offers. First of all, 50% of this bridge is for active transportation. The current bridge is not even wheelchair accessible. We have a bridge now that we're building with bike lanes and path lanes and cycling paths and wheelchair accessible. All those sort of things are extremely important. Secondly, part of the consideration of the bridge was recognizing on an annual basis there's a cost associated with that bridge just to operate and lift it. By moving forward with the new one, we are saving thousands of dollars each and every year. So when we looked at this, when we looked at how it was built, how it's going to operate, when we looked at a 100-year plan, part of it with people like Sonia Chandler, who came from the Green parties and others, that was the vision that we came forward with, and that was the one that people supported. Now there's some exciting stuff that we can do. Sewer. There's a great opportunity for what's known as local energy districts. It's a great way to move that and have heat exchanges and leave that and drive some new housing and make sure that the ongoing heating is easy. Biofuel out of our green scraps program, an excellent opportunity. And when we move for the new crystal pool, let me just end with this by saying, how do you make ice? You suck heat out of it. And currently at the Save on Foods arena, we just throw that up in the air. Why aren't we using that heat energy to heat the pool? Because that's what you do to pools, you heat the water. So, and they're just across the road from each other. So Surrey's moving forward on that program. They have something like that. It's been done. It's just about making sure that as we move forward, that's the thinking that we're using what we want to do, where we want to be in 30 years, not 30 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jason Ross.
Oh, thank you. It is a big subject to say, can we be world leaders or big, major leaders in this sort of an issue, in issues of development and change. And the bridge and sewage are two great examples because they are very topical. The bridge, I think there's a lot that could be learned by just reviewing how we got to where we're at and also seeing what our options are going forward, because I mean, originally this was supposed to be a replacement that was like for like. It was going to have rail. It's not going to have rail now. We're still not sure exactly what the final thing's going to have, as far as we're still niggling on costs and fighting over the contractors about the thing being built properly, or the way that we on the budget that we were saying. And with sewage is an even more interesting topic because we've talked about it, but we haven't gotten down the road very far. There's still a lot of opportunity for change, and one of the areas that when I'm researching about waste and dealing with waste of any type, is the best bang for your buck is to not have the waste at all, preventing it from getting into the system in the first place. And we have a lot of leaky pipes in this city. We have a lot, and when you have a heavy rainy day, we get a lot more sewage that we have to treat. And that means we have to build a much bigger plant. And that was the original plan, was to build this enormous plant We weren't going to fix our pipes. We were just going to deal with the extra water that comes in and try and solve the problem at the end, which is the most cost inefficient way of dealing with this stuff. I think if we went and got the communities together and said, okay, well, the best place to do it is at the house, at your home, at your business. Can we separate out the stuff that can be treated on site, like gray water from black water? The stuff that goes in your sink can be treated on site and used to water your lawn or for other purposes. And getting that conversation going, talking about what our options are and looking for innovation, that's what we should be doing.
Thank you. And now Lisa helps.
Thank you. In the spirit of generosity of this debate, and I really do appreciate the tone and the content tonight, I want to say to the mayor that I'm really glad to hear that he's changed his mind on sewage, because the McLaughlin Point plan was indeed a 20th century solution. It was going to treat the sewage, and I think we need to do that, absolutely. But I agree that we can be a world leader. We can be a world leader, and now is a really exciting opportunity in the region to work with the West Side, who've already they're a little bit ahead in developing their solution, for Victoria to work with Oak Bay and Saanich to come up with a solution, as the mayor says, that produces energy, that recovers resources, and that brings the city and the region into the 21st century and stops thinking about our waste as waste, but starts thinking about our waste as a resource. So I'm excited about that. Not just in particular about sewage, but in terms of us being a global leader in solutions, in solutions of all kind, climate change, transportation, yes we can, and yes we should, because we have one of the most creative, experienced, passionate, highly educated publics of anywhere in Canada. Our citizens, our residents, our small businesses are amazing and have the solutions, and our job as City Hall is simply to listen, bring all of those people together when it's necessary, give a little bit of support where it's needed. But I absolutely think we can be world leaders, because we've got the residents and the business population who are already leading the way.
Thank you. And Dean would like to invoke his rebuttal card.
I thought that might happen.
Because I just wanted to point out that part of what happened with the larger CRD one is that there was an offer put to Esquimalt to use all of the heat and the energy that came off of that plant that was there. It was going to provide a heat and local area energy system to fund their downtown core renewal. I think the amenity package was around $10 to $15 million associated with this. There was an amazing opportunity to show some really forward thinking. That was part of the offer that was put in, to have that as a local amenity for Esquimalt, recognizing that they were accepting a regional facility. So it's unfortunate that didn't work out, but this means that we have the opportunity to try and do it in Victoria, or Saanich, or Oak Bay, or any else of those 7 or 8 plants that we're going to end up doing throughout the region. So it was there, and we just need to continue to make sure that that thinking is still going to be there in the future. I think there's some exciting opportunities.
Thank you. And our final question. So this one, you need to use all of your innovation and creativity to answer, but it's very short. Let's do it. Okay. How respectful. 3 minutes for good behavior. So here's the question, the final question. In 10 years, what will the new economy in Victoria look like? Please paint us a picture, give us details, tell us what the world in Victoria looks like in 10 years. And we'll start with Dean Fortin.
This is fun. Let's blue sky. In 10 years, Victoria will have well, I was going to say we're already one of the greenest cities in Canada. But okay, we are. We tied with Vancouver. Gregor said, damn it, I should have put in one more bike lane and then I could have beat you. But we tied. Really, that's what he said. But in 10 years, we can be recognized as a world leader in the knowledge-based economy. We can be recognized as a world leader in our approach to climate change. We recognize that cities, 60% of greenhouse gases come from cities. How we build our buildings, where we put our transportation, how we move people around, that we will be recognized as a transformative change happened. We have the framework for it. We're looking to put $5 million into new cycling facilities. We can do that in 2 years, and to go from 11% of cycling, and the average, by the way, in North America is 3, but we're at average at 11. We can get, and we will get to, the Denmark and European ones of 30%, 40% active transportation. That's what we want to see. But ultimately, in the end, our happiness index will be the highest. And there'll be huge competitions to see who's happier, the people in Cook Street Village or Quadra Village, or and everybody will be so happy they won't fight about it and we'll all get together. But that's fundamentally what we're building. Strong, resilient communities and villages, and that's what we're going to see. We're going to be recognized as being a truly sustainable city, the one that everybody in the 21st century and 22nd century are going to say, that's where we take the lead from, because that's where the innovation was, and this is where it's coming from today and forever. That's what we want to do.
Next, we'll hear from Jason Ross.
Because every once in a while you get that 1 minute finger, but you get the finger.
I think this city is poised to really take off as far as local economy is concerned. I think we're dealing with what's viewed as sort of a crisis of businesses leaving town, but I think that leaves an opportunity for new ideas and new thinking to serve the local community at the small business level. And I think in food production, I think in 10 years we can go a long ways to having most of our food produced in the region. I think we can go to having most of our energy, at least on the steps of getting to the point of having most of our energy produced locally, if not being mostly an independent city for its resources that we need to be able to live day to day. I'd like to see our transit system actually function in an efficient and timely manner, something that we can be proud of, to know that we stand outside and expect our bus to show up at 8:45, it shows up at 8:45 and gets us to where we're going. I think all of those details can be achieved, but we need to look at things at the local neighborhood level. We need to pull away from doing city-wide planning and trying to create catch-all solutions and really custom tailor what we need to do for the local community. What does your neighborhood need? We should be having that conversation regularly, and we should be working towards achievable goals in reasonable time frames, but focusing on stuff that we can get done quickly and cheaply to get the best bang for the buck. We shouldn't be going in the other direction where we try and create a really large, expensive plan that takes 30 years to go, like renewing our local neighborhood plans. We should be able to update the information that we have and do it in a timely manner and have it available online and easily consumed for everybody, instead of having you pour through pages and pages and pages of documentation. So, short answer is, I believe that in 10 years' time, this city will not look like it looks like now. I think it will be bustling and full of local neighborhoods that are full of businesses that are successful and happy, traveling people, walking, biking, enjoying the wonderful, incredible environmental Garden of Eden that we have on the city that's so different than the rest of the country. And we're all so lucky to live here.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Changes the Clown.
Um, 10 years from now, Changes the Clown, you might guess, would like to see a city of Victoria with no child poverty. And this is entirely possible. You know, we're according to the sort of prevailing way of thinking about economics and society and that sort of thing, the way we're encouraged to think, child poverty is often assumed to be a reflection of economic conditions. And that's not the case. That's demonstrably not the case. There's empirical evidence showing that that's simply not the case. The poorest province in Canada, Prince Edward Island, has half the rate of child poverty that wealthy, prosperous British Columbia has. In British Columbia, the rate of child poverty, the provincial average is 18.6%. In Prince Edward Island, I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's 9.5%. 51%, in any case, 51% of the rate in BC. Half the rate of child poverty in BC. This is in the poorest province in the country. In the second poorest province in the country, New Brunswick, the rate of child poverty is 56% of the rate of child poverty in BC. So what these comparisons between provinces show is that child poverty is not a reflection of economic conditions. Instead, it's a reflection of policy decisions. It's a reflection of public priorities, basically, government priorities. Now, it's easy to talk about this in terms of priorities, but I think we could really use a stronger sort of terminology to talk about this kind of thing. As priorities, well, maybe it's a question of values, or maybe it's a question of morality. I'm going to finish with that. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Lisa Helps.
Thank you. Thanks, Changes. So 10 years from now, 5% of all of the local RRSP contributions in Victoria are made to the Community Investment Fund, and that's a nod to Nicole Chaland, who's been pushing that for many years. And this fund has funded the startup of many social enterprises and affordable housing projects. We also have creative solutions to affordable housing, like the Urban Land Trust in Denver, who purchases land, and it's held in trust by the community, lived on by the community. So I'd like to see at least one Urban Land Trust project in Victoria in the next 10 years. We have a burgeoning local currency, maybe it's the VI dollars or something else. In Bristol, England, the Bristol pound started, and it was supported by the local government and has taken off as a complementary currency in Bristol, where you can shop locally with local dollars. Not a cent leaves the local community. So in 10 years, I know it's been talked about for a long time, I'd like to see a VI dollars, or maybe just a V dollars, Victoria dollars. The city's planning department has a placemaking arm, which is staffed with local citizens who work together with the planning department and their neighbors to create small and large-scale placemaking initiatives in the neighborhoods. What else? The Social Planning Council has spun off a number of other investment funds. City of Victoria, and the Mayor talked about this, which I appreciate, the City of Victoria and its citizens have been awarded all sorts of awards for climate change prevention, green building innovation. Some of our parks are on their way back to renaturalization and more native species. We're moving in that direction a little bit already. The Parks Department will be growing vegetables in addition to ornamental flowers, and they may even have workshops once in a while for interested citizens who want to learn more about growing food. And finally, City Hall will be a place where people can come not just to see their city council at work, but maybe to be engaged in an interesting conversation. And again, Jason's got great ideas in this regard. How can we, I think 247 is a little bit far, but how can we turn community, there we go, Community Hall. How can we turn City Hall into a place where people go not just to get a building permit, not just to pay their parking ticket, but as a place where they know, hey, that building down on Pandora Street, that's somewhere that will help me build community. That's my 10-year vision. Thank you.
And so now, we're going to have our luxurious and spacious 3-minute closing, where each of you make statements that tell us anything else that we need to know about how you're going to reinvent the new economy of Victoria, British Columbia. And so in our perpetually evolving agenda, we are going to take at least one question from the audience. So start formulating your powerful question, and Nicole is going to gather up that question so that we can hear it through a mic. Okay, perfect. Okay, so It's a big question. Are you ready for this really big question?
So why don't you just give us what you got and we'll kind of play with it. It'll
Yeah.
be good. It'll be awesome.
Yeah, you should be up here.
I think it'll go long. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to read both questions, and then we'll go in some randomly selected order. So pay attention. So now I have to read your handwriting, which is maybe a little hard. What's the most interesting decision-making body or service for policy making and or place making or neighborhood resource groups? So what do you think is the most interesting decision-making body in the community for community decision-making? And we're going to begin with changes. Oh, sorry. And the second question, I'm breaking my own rules. Second question is, what is each of your plans for improving communication with the province? And what is the larger community communication plan? Does that work? And we're going to begin with changes the clown.
It's been suggested to me that by answering all the questions, I run the risk of diluting the changes for mayor message, which is clearly a message about child poverty and things that can be done about it at the local level. So I think I'm actually going to pass on both of these questions. The second one, I guess, well, maybe I'll just comment briefly on the second one. The obvious, I mean, it's fairly obvious. I think that the changes is proposing that things should be done at the municipal level that are properly addressed at the provincial level or even the federal level, which obviously invokes questions of communication. But I mean, that's just an obvious point. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Lisa Helps.
Thank you. I think that that's a fantastic question. What's the most useful body for making particular decisions? And I really think it depends on what kind of decision is being made. So for large scale or even small scale redevelopments in neighborhoods, we have the community association land use committees, and I think that's a great body to be involved in land use decision making. For placemaking, there's a Victoria placemaking network that's springing up, and so that would be a good place to start with placemaking initiatives. With things like local area plans that are convened and coordinated for the large part by the city, I think that we need a broader spectrum of people involved than the land use committee or placemaking initiatives. But my real feeling is that we need to, as much as possible, empower our residents and small businesses to help us make decisions on a more regular basis. So it's not so much the best body, and I heard the murmurings of the word technology, and I think that the city right now has a technology. It's called Have Your Say Victoria, and it's really great. Our citizen engagement department has piloted it, and we've used it for things like getting input on what do you think about tankers, what do you think about the bicycle master plan. But I see no reason why we couldn't use the Have Your Say Victoria, I guess it's not so much a body as a technology, for every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, and this actually, I guess, gets me into answering the second question. Every 2 weeks we say, here are some of the things we're going to be deciding. Have Your Say Victoria, type in and send us your input on the weekly decisions of council. So now I guess I'll turn more, and I'm happy to talk more about this after if you want, because I think it's a really important question. Communications. The city's relationship with the provincial government has not been very good for some time now. Now, I know the mayor does meet regularly with some provincial ministers, but I'm not sure what it is. It goes back to the early 90s, and that's one of my main objectives after being elected, is go to the provincial government with the ministers that have relevant files and say, you know, I'm the new mayor of the capital city of British Columbia, and let's hit a reset button. And the way we do that is looking for shared wins, not necessarily shared political wins, but what do they want to accomplish in Victoria in the next however many years, and what do our residents and businesses need, and to find common goals with the province, and I think that will help. In terms of communicating out from City Hall, I agree we could be doing a better job. We have made a few strides, but what I would like to see is a continuous two-way conversation. And if we shouldn't have to rely on Facebook and Twitter to do this, but if you, for example, go to my Twitter feed and ask me anything on a regular basis, I'm continually responsive. And I think we need to drive that culture of responsiveness throughout our organization. The other thing is, 5 seconds? All right, sir, I'll have to tell you my other idea after. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Jason Ross.
I'm going to answer the second question first, because I'm trying to rack my head on who I think is a good local, if the question's for in the city of Victoria, who the best local decision-making body is. Communication, there's two directions that we're talking about. You were talking about communication. One was at the community level, and one of the ideas I've been bringing up a lot in this election campaign is the Muskoka-Chika management area that a friend of mine, Wayne Sawchuk, helped organize, and it's a big act, provincial law, that was designed by the public. It actually wasn't designed by the provincial government. And what he did was he got the different, parties that are interested in the area to get together to talk about, okay, let's look at the big map and let's start breaking down area by area who's got interest in these areas. If you don't, well then we'll find some consensus of this is what we're going to do here. And his main focus was conservation, so particularly wildlife and whatnot. But there were provisions in there for resource extraction, for protection of First Nation important sites, for tourism, for hunting, for all sorts of areas. And that's a process that really attracted me because the community built the plan. The community, the residents, the business owners got together and said, this is what we want. And when there was conflict, they went off to their own separate groups and had a separate discussion. And then they came back to the table and started to find some consensus. And that's what I think city planning should be as well. I think we should be looking at the local neighborhood level and at the block level and saying, what is that's here, and what is it that different groups want? If everybody wants the same thing, well, that's an easy thing to solve. But if there is conflict, then we should encourage them to go and talk separately and see what their position is and what they really need, and then come back to the table and find some form of compromise and find consensus and building consensus. And the same thing can happen at the provincial level as well. I've done a lot of work at the provincial level as a developer, and it's, when you talk about the province, there's a lot of ministries and there's a lot of information going on, and it has usefulness for different areas of the city for different reasons. For instance, agricultural land or coastal protection or environmental issues or wildlife and of course business and urban development and whatnot. So having that conversation at the local level allows us to bring the different groups together across that spectrum from the province down to the local area and share the information, talking in discrete points instead of talking sort of as a blanket big solution. Anyway, thank you.
Dean Fortin.
Thank you very much. And there's sort of, as you say, there's two questions here, so looking forward to it. The first one, let's talk a little bit about the relationship with the province. Often I hear this in the terms of, well, you have to elect a BC Liberal to mayor to get anything for this city. That's usually where it comes from. So you can't afford to have a progressive mayor in Victoria. But other than one glaring example, we've actually shown great success with the province. We met with Premier Campbell on 2 times and the new Premier, and we were able to move forward to make sure that the next provincial office building was in Victoria. We couldn't afford to have another one move out of our downtown to uptown, or worse, to Langford or Vancouver. And so now we have the Capital Walk program, which is that bringing us $500,000 of revenue, a new library, more housing, and provincial office just behind the legislature. We were able to move forward on that. Federal funding for the bridge, $37.5 million, the biggest grant ever happened. Funding from Western diversification to make sure that our economic development strategy was funded and brought in. Housing, $4.5 million from Rich Coleman to help us buy and purchase the Travelers Inn to make sure that we could build supportive housing. Another $5 to $10 million in different projects moved in here. Just the other day, we phoned up BC Housing and said, our place needs money for a weekend breakfast program. And although they had been turned down from BC Housing, they changed their mind and flipped them another $150,000. We have those relationships. Transportation with Minister Stone, moving forward on an increase to gas tax so we can expand transit. Sewage, meeting with Mary Pollock, meeting with the federal minister, making sure that 44% of Victoria's money in that $500 million is there for us as we move forward. The land swap, the largest land swap, where we actually got to move forward for RailMax to invest and create up to another 100 jobs. And we got, all of that happened because we have this relationship. But we also need to make sure that we have a government that's willing to push back on pipelines when they want to move that in and double, or what is it, 10 times the amount of oil tankers. We push back on Canada Post closing, on changing the voting where they're going to move Vic West out of the Victoria riding. We were able to push back and make things happen. So I don't think we need to be afraid to be a progressive city and progressive mayor and council, that we will stand up for those things that are important. But I think we've also been very successful, other than the one decision, if I could. The one person who was able to fund the bridge from the provincial level was the local MLA. They are the one that says yea or nay. And that person didn't support Victoria. You know, that person blocked that funding coming in. It was there. We're the only city in all of Canada not to get matching provincial funding. So we've been successful on that. We'll continue to get success. We look forward to some things coming soon. I'll get to the other question on communications, but I just got the finger.
If you're watching online and you can't see, he doesn't mean the wrong finger. He means this very respectful index finger.
It was the fickle finger of fate, I believe, is what it was. Or those that.
That's right. And so again, our luxurious and spacious 3-minute closing statements from the candidates, and we will begin with Dean Fortin.
Oh, great. I moved all my notes and then give me 1 second, thanks.
Commence talking.
And so I have like 1 minute or 2?
You have 3 luxurious minutes.
Thank you. So Victoria has a very diverse growing economy, and it's illustrated by who's in this room. And of course, government and tourism and university sectors are important sectors for us. It's who we are. We're a tourist town, we're a government town, we're a university town, we are a shipbuilding town. But more and more we're seeing a growing number, a high tech, and it is actually our #1 industry, where we're seeing entrepreneurs, and now we're seeing the growth of social entrepreneurs, and that's really exciting. As a city, just recently we had an opportunity to reach out, and we're looking forward to some sort of new agreement with Airbnb to become a partner in their Share City program. We need to be, must be, open to all those new ideas that are coming forward. And it's important that we continue to foster those established sectors, but they too are moving forward with a new business model, moving forward, whether it's value-based or integrating the new economy. We're seeing those examples all the time, whether it be, as Lisa said, you know, Van City, who are investing their dollars locally, or the Big Wheel Burger that's growing food gardens outside of the restaurant, or the Empress actually putting honeybees on the roof, using that honey for their people. But you and I know how important it is that we have those bees for our local forests and our local plantings. So we're seeing that happen. We can continue to foster it. We look for individual ideas. We'll look for grander schemes and make things move forward. But that's fundamentally where we are going in the future. It is how we define ourselves in Victoria. Victoria is the most romantic city. We're the smartest city in Canada. We're the greenest city in Canada. We are not Vancouver. We're not Seattle. We're not Surrey. We're not Langford. We are Victoria. And we enjoy a special opportunity of having the people here that with your ideas and working together, we can continue to move forward on the direction. One that continues to increase our happiness, but probably most importantly, one that is important for our children. And that's the vision I think we always have in our minds. Where is our city in 30 years? What does it look like, and who is running it? It's the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Jason Ross.
Thank you. My last time with the stick. I'm not the sort of typical candidate that runs for mayor. I'm somebody who's passionate about the city, and I'm passionate about governance, and I like clear, effective communication and organized conversation. And that's the strong point that I bring to the table. And I want the city's conversation to change. I want it to be an ongoing living conversation. And that means getting people involved, getting people engaged. One of the things I've been talking about this election has been the electoral process itself is not really effective at identifying the best candidates for the job. We're not picking people who are good at being mayor and council. We're picking people who can stand up and answer questions, seeing them sight unseen, like you're blindly essentially answering a question and trying to come up with a concise answer in a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes. And that to me seems like we're selecting the wrong skill set. You know, this is a job hiring process. We're trying to hire the next council of the city of Victoria, and we do it through a voting process, but the people aren't turning out. We don't have media coverage for a lot of this. I haven't seen that many television or radio or newspaper reporters at any of these public meetings. So changing the way that we discuss politics is, I think, a crucial thing. I think that we can make an electric change in the way that we as a city operate just by sitting down and having a conversation that we're not having right now. One where the community drives the conversation, where the voters are the ones that say, this is what's important and this is what we can talk about. The wonderful thing about the generation we live in is that the internet is available to everybody, and it's available on a little tiny phone, right? On this little thing. You can go around with this thing and do amazing work. Every citizen can go out and see a piece of graffiti or some garbage or a sidewalk that's starting to fall apart. Take a photo, and you should be able to send it to City Hall, and people should be able to go and use things like social media to say, yeah, I agree, and I agree. This is something that needs to be done. And the more people that buy into a system like that, where we can actually demonstrate there's hard numbers of people that are interested in this issue, that's a way that we can focus on our priorities. The stuff that people care about, getting that done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next we'll hear from Changes the Clown.
One in 5 children, and an astounding 1 in 2 children of single mothers in Victoria live in poverty. The province of BC has the highest rate of child poverty in the country, and it has had for 9 of the last 10 years. The provincial government stubbornly ignores this social crisis and BC remains one of only 2 provinces in the country that doesn't even have a poverty reduction strategy. Changes to Clown has become increasingly distressed at the failure of governments to address this crisis of child poverty in our community. Again, 1 in 5 children, and 1 in 2, that's right, half. I mean, can this really be Canada we're talking about? Half of children of single mothers are living in poverty in Victoria. And Changes wants people to join him in calling for something to be done about that. Again, Changes the Clown believes that as the capital city of the province with the highest rate of child poverty in the country year after year, the City of Victoria should demonstrate how this unacknowledged social crisis can be addressed at the municipal level, despite the fact that it formally falls under provincial jurisdiction and not municipal jurisdiction. The 2 main planks of Change's election platform address this crisis of child poverty. One of these is the idea of an affordable childcare program at $10 a day, subsidized by the city. The City of Vancouver recently announced $30 million in funding for new affordable childcare spaces at the municipal level, providing a clear precedent for an initiative of this kind. The second main platform plank is a living wage policy, similar to the one that's been in place in the City of New Westminster since 2010. BC's minimum wage is only 54% of the living wage for Victoria. And a full-time minimum wage worker makes less than $1,800 a month. I think they'd probably be bringing home about $1,500. And when we consider that the cost of full-time childcare starts at $800 a month, it becomes pretty clear, pretty quickly, why it's simply not possible for a lot of single mothers to work. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Lisa Helps?
Thank you. First, thanks for coming tonight, or thanks for curling up on the couch at home with a cup of peppermint tea and watching us. I want to come back to something that Donna said at the very beginning, and I want to reference Scotland to start. So in the recent Scottish question of should we separate or not, I think about 86% of people came out to vote. And that was because the future of their country was at stake. And I happen to think that this election is about the future of Victoria. Donna said, all of the situations that we're facing, climate change, need for urban sustainability, need for new solutions, particularly with more and more and more people moving into cities around the globe. The time is now to begin changing the way we think about living in a city and we act as a city government. Now, I'm not proposing revolution, but I am proposing that we need to bring some new thinking, some fresh thinking, and some creative perspectives, not just to things like veggie gardens on boulevards, but to the gentleman's question about large-scale projects like the Johnson Street Bridge, like sewage, like the fire hall, like the Bay Street Bridge, like the Crystal Pool. We've got a lot of large-scale projects ahead of us, and those need to be thought through the lens of sustainability, long-term thinking, global leadership. There are so many possibilities in big and small ways in the next 4 years and the next 10 years that Victoria can truly become a leader. Victoria can truly put itself on the map. And I'm really, really looking forward. I relish the opportunity of serving as mayor of this city for the next 4 years and really seizing all of the energy and innovation that's bubbling up from the tech sector to the social enterprise sector to the urban farmers and everybody else, the creative culture. We have so much potential here, and we have so much going for us. And I really do think, and if any, the early polls yesterday are any indication, where we had double the amount of people show up at the early polling station than the last election, there's excitement happening. And I'm really excited to be part of that, part of this movement for building a Victoria that, as Donna said at the beginning, will serve not just ourselves and our children, but that we're setting the groundwork for generations to come. So thanks for being part of that.
Yeah. Can I take back the talking stick?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So the last couple things I want to say, I want to thank these really talented leaders that have stepped forward. It's a big deal when people show up like this to serve our community. I want to thank the organizers. I want to thank Nicole and Jason for this fabulous space and for their hard work. And I want to thank cultures that are 10,000 years old for the wisdom of using a talking stick and creating a container of respect. And thank all of you for also sort of sharing and demonstrating respect to our candidates and to this process. Thank you.
I get the stick. I didn't get it earlier. So I want to give a really great big thank you as well to Dean Fortin, Changes the Clown, Lisa Helps, and Jason Ross. Thank you all for being here today. Seriously. And I want to thank you, Donna Morton, for a wonderful job moderating tonight. And thank you all for being here in the room, and those of you live streaming out there. And do we know how many we've got out there, Jason? No? Lots. It's a big number. I saw a short quote from Brene Brown the other day, and it was, "Bye-bye perfect, hello courage." Yeah. And I think we have seen over the mayoral debates that we've had in the city a lot of courage from our candidates. And thank you all so much for stepping into this new economy realm with us. I think we do a great disservice to ourselves and to our leaders by expecting some sort of imagined perfection. It puts us all in an impossible position. And I'm starting to see, like here tonight, where people are being real, they're allowing themselves to be vulnerable and kind in the face of really tough stuff coming their way. These are not easy decisions. So for me, it's that sort of ground that I'm really wanting to walk on, and also it's what I'm seeing emerging from our futures in the new economy. So I invite you to take the opportunity that is here in Victoria, starting this Saturday and running for 5 days, to continue to become more educated about what is already happening in the new economy here and around the world. You can come join in the conversations and the workshops, and there's a wide array of world-class speakers and facilitators. And I think it was you, Jason, earlier who mentioned something about a yearly conference about economy. We actually have been doing that. This is the second one. So it just occurred to me, it's like, wait a minute, we've got that. So you can buy tickets online at livingtheneweconomy.com, or you all got a little brochure on your seat when you came in. And since I have a little bit of time, I'm just going to quickly run through the days for you so you have an idea what each day has a theme. The first is the day of opportunity with an opportunity fair and flash presentations. So a fair is kind of like it's tables, and then people get 60 seconds to offer their opportunities to the community in 4 separate times throughout the morning and afternoon. And then the evening we're having New Economy Awards and Tea Lounge, also known as a party. And then on the Sunday, I'm very excited about this day. We're calling it Financing the Future. In Vancouver, we did an hour and a half. We called it, it's 2 years ago now, we did an hour and a half called Financing the Future. And everybody had like 10 minutes to talk about their particular perspective, whether it was crowdfunding or impact investing or microloans or whatever, all these sort of financial tools that are coming forward. And it was an hour and a half event. And what we heard after that was we want all day to talk about this stuff. It's so important and so interesting about how these things can converge. So that's what we're doing. We're taking the full day, we're doing half-hour presentations in each of the contexts so you can get some depth about what's really happening. And then the evening, eavesdropping on the future, all those people are going to be speaking to each other and weaving their perspectives together into a vision of how all these emerging financial tools can weave into a vision of how we can finance our future. On the let me think where I'm at. Monday, the day 3, is evolving entrepreneurship. So it's for entrepreneurs, eco-social entrepreneurs, business people of any sort who are interested in how to come from a place of values in terms of their marketing and their sales in their businesses, a place that's often pretty sticky. for people. We have Ted Hargreave and Mark Sherman. That's another Mark. Mark Silver. Thank you. Coming. They're both awesome. The Tuesday, November 11th, is Women and the New Economy. So it's bringing forward the more feminine perspectives and what role that is playing in our world. We'll have an alternate Remembrance Day ceremony as well in the morning, because we'll be talking about the new economy and peace conversations about peace. And then the final day is about integration, which is also the theme of all the 5 days. And it's like, how do all these things integrate together? In the morning, we're having a placemaking workshop with Mark Lakeman from City Repair in Portland, who rocks. Yeah. So the placemaking came up several times this evening. So he's coming, he's talking about it, and then we're actually reinventing an intersection. In the afternoon, Charles Eisenstein, who is probably the leading voice in the new economy right now in the world, he's streaming in, and Ian McKenzie is going to be in conversation with him here on site. And then in the evening, we're having a fishbowl, which is kind of like a dragon's den for 5 entrepreneurs who are going to pitch their ideas to a panel of judges, and then we'll have a closing. So, in a nutshell, if you're interested, all these awesome candidates for mayor here today have demonstrated a lot of what we're going to be exploring there as well. So thank you once again for coming, and feel free to stay around. And is everybody able to stay to take further questions or whatever?
I'll be for a little minute, but I will say one of the things, small piece of who I am, I coach girls basketball. And there's a 9 o'clock game with a bunch of 13-year-old girls who are waiting for the coach to show up.
9 o'clock
I know, I
basketball
got the
game.
9 o'clock game. I can't believe it. So if I do leave a little bit early, just understand that I made a commitment to 11 kids that are very special to me.
Fair enough.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you all once again, and take care. We'll see you soon.